If I asked you to name the most mysterious story of the 20th century involving the death of people, you would probably say it's the Dyatlov Pass incident. And I wouldn't argue with you, but I will anyway. The fact is that back in 1948, on the other side of the planet, in the sunny shores of Australia, on the breathtaking and stunning Somerton Beach, there unfolded and occurred an equally mysterious and enigmatic story involving the death of a single, solitary individual. And all Australians know it as the case of the mysterious Somerton Man, but the rest of the world knows it by a completely different name, the Tamam Shud case. Brew some coffee, detectives, we're getting started. Friends, before we start delving into the details of the case, I just want to let you know that this video might turn out a bit long because I'll try not to leave out any circumstances and to give you as many hard facts as possible. And who knows, maybe by the end of this video, together we'll be able to answer the most important question that the greatest minds of humanity have been struggling with for years. Oh right, you don't know what it is yet. It's the perfect time to introduce you to the case. So on December 1st, 1948, the body of an unidentified man, aged 40 to 45, was found on Somerton Beach in Adelaide, Australia. According to a report by the well-known Australian scientist John Burton, the man who was found looked like a Briton in appearance. He was 180 centimeters tall, had brown eyes and reddish hair with a touch of grey at the temples. The man's face, which had no distinguishing features, was clean-shaven. His toes were shaped like a wedge. This specific type of foot deformity is commonly observed in people who often wear pointed shoes. The deceased had a well-developed calf muscle, which is typical for ballet dancers and middle and long-distance runners. He was well-dressed, a white shirt, a red and blue tie, brown trousers, socks, and shoes. And although Adelaide had a period of rather hot days and very warm nights, the deceased was wearing a brown knitted sweater and a fashionable European double-breasted jacket. At that time, it was customary to sew name tags onto clothing for the laundry. There was nothing like that on the Somerton Man's clothing. The clothing manufacturer's labels had also been carefully removed. One of the trouser pockets had been sewn shut with a type of orange thread that was not available in Australia. Here are a couple more interesting details about the case. The fact is, no hat was found with the deceased, which was simply a must for a man in the 1950s, especially if he wore a classic suit. Also, no wallet was found with the deceased, which could have suggested a robbery. But that's only at first glance. The police officers who arrived at the scene where the body was found determined that there were absolutely no signs of any external physical impact on the deceased. During the detailed examination of the pockets, the following items were discovered. Take note: an unused ticket for a suburban train ride from Adelaide railway station to Henley Beach station. Another used ticket for a bus to the Glenelg stop, a suburb of Adelaide. A half-empty pack of juicy fruit chewing gum, an Army Club cigarette pack containing Conceita's brand cigarettes, which is also very strange, and a partially used box of matches. The bus stop where the man is believed to have gotten off was located about 1,100 meters north of where the body was found. And here a logical question arises: what was a man in a classic warm suit and with additional warm clothing doing on a beach in Australia? Let's try to trace his route according to the tickets found in his pockets. Look, we have two tickets. The first was for a bus from the Adelaide bus stop to Glenelg at 12 noon. He used this one. The second was for a train from Adelaide Central Railway Station to Henley Beach Station at 11 in the morning. He didn't have time to use this one. No return tickets were found. Things get even more interesting from here, but let's proceed in order. Let's start with the autopsy results. The fact is, it showed that the man died at 2 o'clock in the morning on December 1st. And from here, we return once again to our question: did the man in the warm suit really wander around the beach all day until late at night? The police still had to answer this question, but let's return to the autopsy results. The fact is, it revealed quite a few interesting details, specifically that the death could not have been natural. Both kidneys were inflamed and there was an excess of blood in the vessels of the liver. The spleen was unnaturally large, approximately 3 times the normal size. Blood was also found in the stomach, as well as in some other internal organs, and the pupils were unnaturally constricted. 3 to 4 hours before death, the unknown man had eaten a Cornish pasty, an English national pie with filling. The cause of death could not be determined. No traces of poison were found either in the body or in the remains of the pie. Pathologist Dr. Dwyer made the following conclusion: I am absolutely convinced that this man died an unnatural death. Barbiturate compounds and soluble sleeping pills could have been used as the poison. Poisoning was considered the main cause of death, but the investigation did not name the poison with which the man was poisoned, the circumstances that led to his death, or even the name of the man himself. And due to this lack of information, it was decided to involve Scotland Yard. After Scotland Yard got involved, a thorough effort was made to distribute the photograph of the deceased, and his fingerprints were sent to investigative agencies in many countries, but this yielded no positive results. For several weeks, the police tried to establish the identity of the deceased, but all efforts were in vain. There was not a single clue as to who this mysterious stranger could have been. Then in early January 1949, two men entered the police station and immediately declared that they knew the deceased. In their opinion, it was a 63-year-old lumberjack named Robert Walsh. A few days later, another man named James Mack appeared on the scene, and after carefully examining the body, he also confirmed that the deceased was indeed Robert Walsh. Mack claimed that Walsh had left Adelaide several months earlier with the intention to buy sheep, but he never returned by Christmas as he had originally planned to do. However, the police were rather skeptical about these statements, firmly believing that Walsh was simply too old for the deceased man to actually be him. Nevertheless, the investigators confirmed that the physical build of the deceased was very similar to that of an average lumberjack, if such a specific thing even exists. However, there was one small caveat that completely ruled out this version. It was the condition of the deceased's hands and nails. This indicated that he had not engaged in such work for at least a year and a half. However, everything became clear after a second examination of the body, which revealed that the deceased did not have the characteristic features of Walsh. There were no scars on the body, and the foot size of the deceased did not match that of the missing lumberjack. By January 10, 1949, the investigation had received 8 statements claiming that the deceased was someone's friend, had worked on a steamboat, or had been a stableman. Some claimed that he had come from Sweden and was Swedish. In short, the investigation kept following false leads until 4 days later, there was another twist in the case. January 14, 1949 marked a significant turning point in the investigation when employees of the Adelaide railway station discovered a suitcase with its labels cut off, which had been deposited in the station's luggage storage after 11:00 a.m. on November 30th, 1948, the very day before the stranger's death. Inside, they found a red dressing gown, size 40 slippers, 4 pairs of underpants, pajamas, shaving accessories, a table knife that had been modified into a sharp tool, scissors with finely sharpened tips, and brushes for stencil printing. Also found in the suitcase was a pack of Berbo brand waxed orange threads, identical to those used to sew up the pocket of the deceased man's trousers. All the labels on the clothing inside the suitcase had also been removed. However, during the inspection of this strange find, the police discovered the inscription TQ Ne. The police believed that whoever had removed all the labels from the clothing had deliberately left the markings QNE, knowing that they were in no way connected to the person's name or any information about him. From the very beginning, the owner of these clothes was thought to be a local sailor named Tom Keane. And since the police were unable to find him, the investigators decided to show the body of the unknown man to Tom Keane's friends. However, they categorically denied the suggestion that the body found in Somerton could be that of their friend. Moreover, the clothes found on the body had never belonged to Tom Keane. Thus, the only indisputable information that could be obtained from the discovery at the station was that the dressing gown had apparently been made in the USA, since this particular clothing manufacturing technique existed only in that country. Admittedly, this was hardly enough to assume that the victim was American or had ever even been to America, because he could have bought the dressing gown just about anywhere. And so, the investigators had no choice but to follow a different lead. Namely, they set out to find out where the mysterious stranger had come to Adelaide from. The police carefully checked the official records of all trains arriving in Adelaide and determined that the man had almost certainly arrived on the night train from Melbourne. Apparently, he took a shower and shaved at the nearest city bathhouse before returning to the station to buy a ticket for the train to Henley Beach, which departed at 10:50 in the morning. However, for some reason, he missed the boarding. After returning from the city bathhouse, he deposited his suitcase in the luggage storage and took a bus to Glenelg. Professor Derek Abbott, who studied the case, believes that the man may have bought the ticket before he went to the bathhouse. The service and utility facilities at the station were closed to the public that day. For this reason, the man was forced to go to the city bathhouse, which took him about 30 minutes and may have caused him to miss his scheduled train. Time passed, but no new facts emerged, so the pathologist decided to examine the body again. And I can tell you that this was not in vain, because he made several shocking discoveries that influenced the course of the investigation. A professor of pharmacology and physiology at the University of Adelaide suggested that the cause of death could have been an unknown, powerful poison. He also determined the possible composition of the poisonous substance and shared his thoughts with the investigators. However, the professor noted that the only circumstance that did not fit his theory of poisoning by the supposed substance was the absence of any signs of vomiting in the deceased, which prevented him from making a definitive conclusion in favor of his theory. And since the investigation did not have precise information regarding the death of the mysterious man, people began to come up with their own theories. In one theory, he was a Soviet spy who was poisoned by local intelligence services, and in another, he was an alien. And as funny as it may sound, they had their reasons for thinking so. The fact is, the deceased had a rather unusual shape of ears. A professor of anatomy at the University of Adelaide, upon examining images of the deceased man's ears, discovered that the upper cavity of the auricle was larger than the lower cavity, which, according to modern estimates, is characteristic of only 1% of people of European descent. The professor also consulted extensively with specialized dental experts, and ultimately concluded that the deceased man suffered from hypodontia, a congenital absence of one or more teeth, in this case both incisors, which is a condition found in only 2% of the entire world's population. The probability that both of these features would be present in a single person is estimated at 1 in 20 million. But let's return to the investigation and another discovery that continued to trouble the detectives. It was a mysterious scrap of paper found in a hidden pocket of the deceased. On it was written, Tamam Shud, as well as a small piece of paper with some kind of code. Here it is. You can try to decipher what is written here, and who knows, maybe you'll be able to unravel these mysterious lines because we won't be dwelling on them. I just want to mention that many universities around the world have spent years unsuccessfully trying to decode these inscriptions, and there is even information that the Pentagon was unable to do it. But we will take a closer look at the inscription Tamam Shud. This was a potentially significant lead, but Scotland Yard was completely unable to decipher its meaning, so the detectives once again turned to the Australians, specifically to the National Library of Australia, whose dedicated team of experts identified this text as the word finished or completed from the very last page of the collection Rubaiyat by Omar Khayyam. The main idea of the works included in this book was that a person should fully embrace and celebrate every single moment of their life and not regret its eventual end. The text was important, may Khayyam forgive me, but this time the paper it was printed on was even more important. It was a collector's edition of an exceptionally rare and obscure translation with an extremely small and exclusive print run, which was released only in New Zealand. As you can imagine, this significantly and drastically narrowed the entire scope of the search. The police launched a large-scale operation across the country to find the owner of this book. However, they were not successful. Later, a photo of the scrap of paper was sent to police departments in other countries and was also presented to the public. This is what helped to find the person who owned a copy of this book. The last page of this particular copy had been torn out, and an expert examination showed that the scrap of paper found in the deceased's pocket was most likely cut either from this book or from a book of the same edition. The owner of the book stated that he found it on the back seat of his unlocked car on the night of November 30th, 1948, while he was in Glenelg. He claimed that he knew nothing about the book he had found or its connection to the case of the unidentified man's body until he came across an article in one of the newspapers. In addition to the strange text, a phone number was written on the back of the book, which belonged to a former nurse named Justin, who lived in Glenelg, 400 meters from where the body was found. The woman explained in her statement that while she was working at a clinic in Sydney, she was the owner of this specific copy of the book, but in 1945 she gave it as a gift to a lieutenant named Alfred Boxall. After World War II, Justin moved to Melbourne, and it was not long before she received a personal letter from that lieutenant, but she replied to him that she was already married. She also added that in 1948 she learned that some mysterious and unknown stranger had been asking her neighbor several questions about her. To this day, there is no evidence that Boxall had any contact with Justin after 1945. Detective Lean showed the woman a plaster cast of the deceased's bust, but she was unable to identify him. As you can imagine, to this day, this case continues to intrigue many enthusiasts from around the world. And at the University of Adelaide's Law School, there is even an entire department dedicated to the Tamam Shud case. Unfortunately, 70 years later, the Tamam Shud case remains one of the greatest mysteries of the 20th century, and the mysterious stranger will remain either a spy or perhaps an alien. Only one thing is clear: the Tamam Shud case will make itself known again, and we will surely find out what happened back in 1948. This was Alex Brock with you. Subscribe to the channel. See you in the next detective story. Goodbye, everyone.